get started. I'll call the meeting to order. Thank you, everyone. It's just David and me here here, and the rest of you are on Zoom, WebEx, whatever it is. Anyway, shall we have the call to roll call? Start with that.
Yes, we have Linda Baker is not present today. She was unable to attend. Is Amber Banner present? No. Luke Barber?
Here.
Thank you. David Forrest?
Here.
Thank you. Gabriela Garbero?
Here.
Thank you. Stephen Harris?
Here.
Thank you. Josh Lewis?
Here.
Thank you. Stephanie McDowell? No. Brandon Morris? No. Sue Orton?
Here.
Thank you. Cheryl Rose?
Here.
Thank you. Sheila Suderwalla? Let me know she would be joining us a few minutes late. And Robin Wallen?
Here.
Thank you. We do have a quorum.
We have a quorum. Okay. So the next item is the approval of the meeting minutes. I had one correction. There was a verb left out of a sentence, and I've already let you know about that. Does anybody else have any additions or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes with a correction? Okay, David moved to approve it. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Josh, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
One opposed? We'll move on then to the chairperson's report, which Linda has under here, the Universal Design Task Force update. We do have an update. Lisa Clancy did meet with the home builders. We met with her originally over the draft ordinance that the county councilor presented. We've then taken that and our comments to the home builders. They met with the home builders. The home builders made some, suggested changes. And yesterday, Linda and I and Dan and Carol from the Older Adults Commission met by Zoom and went over the changes that the home builders wanted to make, and we will be presenting our response to that. And I don't know what the next step will be. Linda is going to be contacting Craig, and we will see what the next step in the process is. I do want to say that the home builders invited Shalonda Webb to their meeting, and we are going to be asking that she also meet with us so that she can hear our point of view as well. It's the update we have on that. If anybody wants more details, contact me privately. Minutes, Questions? Anybody? All right. Anna, let's go to the ADA coordinator report.
All right, thank you. And I do just want to note, I also see in attendance now Stephanie McDowell is present, and also Amy Ellis. Okay, so we finalized the annual report, and I'll have that sent over to, Sam Page and to the county, council as well. I had arranged for us to have a representative from Metro, Missy Webb, the Director of Security Media and Customer Engagement at Bi-State, to present on the secure platform plan. Metro had requested that they be able to attend a meeting and do that. It was originally scheduled for this month, but they asked for some more time to prepare. So we'll see if they're able to present that information in March. A lot of my time is spent on doing routine things, arranging employee job accommodations and answering inquiries from the public, taking care of things for the Commission on Disabilities, arranging for modifications for people to access county services. So I don't have a lot to report out. Everything's been very routine. I've been telling you about the training that I rolled out, and that's also taking a good chunk of my time, but very important work that I'm doing. I did think that it might be interesting to you to hear a little bit about the type of public inquiries that I get. A lot of times these aren't related to accessing a county service per se, but just someone with a disability who is looking for information and isn't sure where to turn for that. So for example, Monday morning, I came in, I had 2 public inquiries for the same topic. It's one I get a lot. People who live in apartment complexes and they need an accessible parking space for their use, but there are maybe a sufficient amount that meets the ADA requirements on the parking lot, but not enough to meet their specific need. If they need one that's very close to their apartment, or if there's just a lot of use of those spaces and they wind up coming up short. So people will ask, how should I handle this situation? And typically I'm letting them know that my suggestion would be to see if this situation is covered under the Fair Housing Act, which requires that where housing is provided, people with disabilities have an equal opportunity to use and enjoy that housing. And in that rule, they talk about requiring reasonable accommodations and also reasonable modifications. So that's changes to policies and procedures or changes to the physical building itself or facility itself. And so asking for an adequate amount of parking or a parking space that's designated for them close to their door may be an example of a reasonable accommodation modification. And so I give them that information and also information on how to send their complaint to HUD if they want to make a complaint about disability discrimination, and possibly legal resources, things like Missouri Protection and Advocacy or other organizations that are local and can help with legal assistance.
When I worked at the Missouri Commission on Human Rights, that was a very, very frequent complaint topic.
I thought it would be interesting to share just because it is very, very common, and you all may or may not be aware of that information already.
So what other kind of inquiries do you get? I'm just curious.
For things that are not related to accessing a county
To
service?
accessing county services, what kinds of
Yeah,
issues do people bring up?
people might want to know what our procedures are for security when they're coming into a building, like coming through, say, the court building, whether they're going to be able to bring in certain items that might not always be allowed, for example, or someone's, trying to take part in one of our events or programs, like a class with the Parks Department, and they want to see if we can make some reasonable modifications to help them to participate.
Any questions? Anybody have any questions for Dana? All right, old business, older adult commission update. Sue, do you have one?
I was unable to attend the meeting, and so I do not have an update.
All right, accessible transportation. Steve, who's gonna do that? Who's gonna give that report?
Typically, that'll either be Steve Harris or Robin Rowland.
Yeah, are either of you available to give that report? I see Steve, so.
I'm here. I don't know that there's much to report as far as what we haven't met on it. I know, you know, paratransit has made some changes to some of their software, and I think there's been sort of mixed responses to that so far as some of the issues they've been having. Robin might be able to speak more to that. I know they've been having some complaints about things taking longer to get to destinations and some things. But I think it's just a work in progress. So I think if Robin might speak more to it, but Smart, I know, has met about this a few times, and I think they were kind of giving them a little more time to get their feet under them because everything's new. So
This is Robin. I can speak a little more on that. Colorado did start using spare software, and about the first week it was going pretty well, but there were a lot of complaints from the drivers because it works more like rideshare software. And because it works like rideshare software, they're not able to see the following trips. So since that time, Metro has been going in and modifying the software a little bit, which I think is causing more problems than it's solving. The other big issue was that they couldn't see if someone had a wheelchair, a PCA, or a service animal. So they wanted to put that in there. Now the problem is that a lot of people are arriving late to work. I know me personally, I've had calls from people who have been late to work for 2 weeks. I have 3 people I know of that have been written up at work because of what's going on with the software right now. I did go to the Chesterfield Community Connect that was held by Metro, and I talked with Louis Lowry, who is the new director of mobility, and might be someone that we might want to come and talk to us at some point. He has a lot of experience, which makes me hopeful. He actually came from Kansas City, and then he started in Kansas City, and then he was in Des Moines, Iowa for a while. And he does seem like somebody that we can work with, which I think is a positive. But it's all kind of a work in progress at this point. I think this week they were going to start giving customers access to the app, and I don't know if that's going to be a good or a bad thing. As far as anything else, Steve and I haven't really met just because it's been a really busy time of the year. So we need to talk some more, because another thing that's coming down the pike is some possible cuts to transit funding. And I don't have a lot of information on that right now, but that could also affect a lot of things. So that's pretty much what I've got.
yeah, and I think it was after the last meeting when they had Metro had a really rough time with the weather that came through, and that caused some issues. I think everybody did, but I know they had some communication issues that they had going on during that as well. But
Dana, you have,
Yeah, this is Dana. I just wanted to note that Louis Lowry is who was one of the people who was at our last meeting here. Who was talking about the microtransit.
You're right. I completely forgot. My bad.
No, you're fine. I wanted to ask if I could, Robin, you said something about with the new software, they were not able to see the following trips. What does that mean?
Okay, basically the way the software works is it works with Google Maps. So kind of like if you ride a ride share, it would route the van closest to you to pick you up. Then the driver would pick you up, and then the software would give the driver the next trip, and that person's profile would come up. And so they would head to the next person, but they would not tell the driver where your drop off was. So it basically is they see the trips as they go. It's not like they have a paddle like they used to have where the trips are scheduled the day before.
Thank you for explaining that. I appreciate it.
Sure, no problem.
Yes. Some of the complaints that I was seeing on the smart site was one guy was saying that it might have been on their meeting that his usual trip to go to his gym was, which was like 5 minutes away, was they would pick him up and take him right there. But with the new software, it was taking an hour and a half for him to get to the gym because they would pass it up multiple times going to different trips and take him way out in the county and then, back around. So that's the sort of thing that that used to be a little more organized. I think because of this, you can't look ahead sort of thing was causing some issues, but
Yeah, and I think the other part of it is that's not actually the way the software is supposed to work, but it seems like every time they go in and modify something and add something, it gets worse. So when they went in and they changed it and they added the PCAs, the wheelchairs, and the service animals, then they started having other things. And I don't know where the software isn't working the way it's supposed to because it's supposed to route like to the next closest, but it's not doing that right now. So I suspect that as they make these changes, that's what's causing a lot of the problems.
Stephanie. Stephanie, you had your hand up?
Hi, yeah. I have definitely ran into all those problems of being late. I've also ran into the problem of on the van while we waited for half hour or so for somebody because of time, the time being off. Like it wasn't their time to be picked up. So we sat there. So I sat there and wasn't able to be get home in a timely manner or to get to work in a timely manner, um, which was not fun. Also, they do not have the spare app isn't quite open for customers just yet. So I checked. Thanks.
Yeah, Stephanie, they did say that it's supposed to be open to customers this week. I'm kind of hoping they don't do it because until they fix the other problems, I think it's only going to make things worse. But
I
who
agree
knows?
with you. I agree. One problem at a time.
Luke, did you have something you wanted to say? Luke, is your hand up?
They already answered the question I had.
Robin, I'm a little concerned about the people that are getting disciplined because of this problem. I don't know if that becomes an accommodation issue at their work site. It's been a long time since I've been involved in that, but I would check with the Commission on Human Rights or with EEOC to see if that they can request that late arrival as an accommodation for something that's beyond their control.
That is a good question, and that's something I'm really concerned about because it's kind of a situation where there were staff at Metro that I've talked to in the past that assumed that that would be a reasonable accommodation. And part of that stemmed from the supported employment places that actually were forgiving their workers. And then it became a thing that they thought that every business and every company would forgive their workers. I can only speak from my experience, and it might be something we want to check with EEOC on. But with my experience, whenever I had a problem getting late because of call ride, yes, it was absolutely held against me. And I right now, as part of the Missouri Council of Blind, their transportation chair, I can tell you that we have 3 people that are on write-ups now at their jobs, and these are not supported employment jobs. So that may be something worth looking into further, because what I'm really concerned about is that people are going to start losing their employment over this.
I'm not sure, you know, a lot of times people are late to work, their car doesn't start or whatever, and that is not something employers have to take into account, but this is different. It's worth for people checking.
Oh, yeah.
To see if they can, you know, if that could be an ADA violation.
It-
Oh, Luke?
To answer your question, I know the late arrival or the changes to work scheduling or whatever is commonly a reasonable accommodation that is commonly approved when asked for, as long as they have appropriate documentation of disability. I know for a fact every employer I have had has kind of worked with people in that regard. I don't know for sure every single company, but I know at least quite a few of them in the retail sector in sort of the West County area have in the past. And I know for a fact that that would qualify under ASOP or the JAN network and some of the other job accommodation stuff that is available. It's hard for me to say exactly in every person's situation because I know it is a little bit specific on the disability types. Specifically for those I know that have more issues with time management or those that have factors outside of their control is more what it's used for than just an everyday run-of-the-mill kind of thing. And so it's, I know, a little bit question mark because it is Colorado and Metro that is kind of the problem, which is a transit provider. But I do know that that kind of stuff historically has been sort of worked through.
Okay, thanks, Luke. Robin, if you do find out anything more on that, and contacting EEOC or get any further information about whether that can be an accommodation, please let us know.
I will look into that. And I will let you know next month. I'll definitely look into it because I'm concerned about a lot of people right now.
Yeah, I can understand that. I'm concerned too. People should lose their job over call a ride. Okay, anything else on Stephanie? Is your hand up? Stephanie?
Sorry, I didn't get it down. I thought I did.
Okay, all right. Well, we're just checking. Okay, is there anything else that anybody has on accessible transportation?
I just wanted to make a comment about the EEOC. I just know, Robin, this is more for you. They're very, very backlogged right now. I have to interact with them a lot for one of my cases that I have, and so I would reach out to the Missouri Commission on Human Rights first, and if they don't have a good answer, then reach out to the EEOC just because they've been very, I guess, overextended, I would say.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next item is accessible parking, and apparently this is Steve Harris. Steve, you want to?
Sure. What I wanted to present something I've been working on with the United Spinal Association. They've come out with an accessible parking guide, which covers basically all the necessary things that cities and states should be providing in accessible parking. Also outlines quite a few of the issues and things associated with it. I'm going to put a link in the chat as we go here for anybody who's interested in downloading it. It's a PDF file, so you have to download it. And I'll go over some of the key things that they determine there. There's a link in the chat there. Um, when they started looking into this problem, and I've been on the working group for this for about a year now. One of the first thing they noticed was a few of the problems that was associated with it. Number one is basically a supply and demand issue is what it comes down to. Currently, the ADA requires 4 spots for every 100 spots in a lot to be accessible. 2 of those to be van accessible. What they've determined, they didn't talk to Missouri, even though I tried to get information from Missouri for them. They did probably about 18 to 20 states that they were able to get information. Currently, let's say there's 4 spots for every 100 spots. They determined that out of 100 basically registered vehicles, on average, in the states that they surveyed, there's 10 disabled placards for every 100 registered vehicles. So obviously there's a shortfall in what's needed generally to satisfy the need that's out there. The other thing that they were working on was looking into different enforcement stuff. One of the things they looked at was fraud and abuse of the disabled placard system and different ways that states are trying to combat that. Enforcement, just enforcing the parking, code enforcement of the parking is an issue. And just enforcing parking violations as well. So they had problems with that. There was the other lack of public education was something that they wanted to address. Sometimes just the rules in general. So they put together this guide, and it's a way to kind of educate people and local and state governments on some of the issues and what can be done. So one of the things they suggesting, and that's one of the things they decided that they're going to be working on with the U.S. Access Board, I think they planned it for 2026, is to lobby for an increase in the minimum number of ADA parking spaces. So that's one of their primary goals, is try and increase supply. Now there's some other things that we've looked at. They highlighted a Fairfax County, an article from Fairfax County, Virginia, where they made they raised by themselves the minimum number of ADA parking spaces in their county. So that's something that another county has done. There's an ordinance in Louisville that was passed by, there's a Jenny Smith rolls on. She's a blogger, and she lives in Louisville. And based on her problems, she was able to lobby a local ordinance that got passed that basically, number one, made sure that police knew they were empowered to tow even on private lots, because some states have issues where the police aren't allowed to go on a private lot to tow. And even if they are, some police aren't aware of it, or they just say that they're not. They wanted to make sure that the definition of van accessible parking was spelled out. And in many cases, they wanted to change the ordinance so that it had to be better marked. So they had the words no parking on the access stripes as a requirement. to be part of the painting. And all that stuff would have applied to basically new developments or any place that wants to restripe or change their lots must comply with that. And that was in Louisville. Ordinance 72 is the one. They wanted some state level changes. I know that wouldn't affect us here, but one of the things as far as education, they were kind of lobbying to get in state levels to put accessible parking on driver's exams and to add accessible parking rules in that scenario. Working on placard fraud proofing is another thing to try and crack down on that. And there's some states that do some things along that lines. Trying to find a way to consider cracking down on fraud and abuse in the medical community. That's another issue. Of places that just crank out parking placards. Addressing law enforcement empowerment issues, as discussed. And in Missouri, I looked it up. It seems that in the Missouri law does address that, that allows towing and also on private properties. It's section 301.143 seems to address that. And the last problem they were looking at was encroachment issues. And I know we've seen EV charging stations going up, and those can encroach on some of our spots. Curbside pickup spots over the last, especially since the pandemic, have multiplied, and that's encroached on some of the potential ADA spots. And then also just promotions and sometimes even extra seating is brought out that into those areas that can affect ADA parking. So it's an issue that I see on a daily basis. I think anybody that's using a wheelchair and needs the accessible parking and the access aisle probably sees on a daily basis. And on a survey they did, it ranks as one of the top, towards the top of one of the reasons people are afraid to participate in daily life and some activities. So I just wanted to present that out there, and just I don't know if there's anything that can be done on our level, but I just thought it was some great information that would be worth getting out in our council, just to kind of look at it and see if there's anything that we can do on a local level.
So if the county has the ability to increase the number of spots, then obviously that's something we can advocate for. How do we find that?
I think everybody pretty much goes by the ADA standard, which is where these go. But the people at United Spinal were like, well, we want to emphasize that if your local government is telling you, well, we can't, it's set by the ADA, there's no reason why they could not, if they wanted to, go above and beyond what the ADA requires as far as parking spots availability. And the ADA is, it's definitely behind where the demand is at this point. And that's pretty easy to see, even if they don't have the data to back it up. If you just drive around, it's pretty easy to see that. Also, one more thing that I forgot, one more thing that some places have done, Austin and Portland are two examples, that they've created basically a volunteer ADA parking enforcement group. So it's run through their county or city, where they empower volunteers to do mostly education, but can also write tickets and those sorts of things.
And he put a link in the chat. Can you send that link out to us? Because we can't.
I could,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, I can send that out, and I can send the links to the other articles that I talked about.
We could do that. We could, when we meet with we could talk about it at the next meeting about how we want to approach that. If we want to try to meet with the Committee on Disabilities of the council, or, if this is something we want to pursue. Sounds like some really good ideas.
I think one really easy first step we could do.
Luke, we can't hear you.
I said, I think one, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think one really easy first step that we could do as a commission is if we know where all the county government buildings are, or where the county parking kind of things are, kind of doing a quick walkthrough and check and figure out how many ADA spaces we actually have at those parking lots or things, and just kind of doing an assessment of kind of how many ADA versus van versus spots, because I get that the ADA measurement might be a little bit low. I get that the lots might not be set up exactly, but if we have sort of a baseline count, then when we start advocating for things, we can say, we have this, let's try this, and we can kind of come to them with more of a proposal kind of strategy than just kind of trying to go, here's kind of what we want without anything kind of drafted. I know when we were doing our universal design ordinance stuff, we had kind of looked at some other states, some other localities, and really sort of had that draft kind of idea, or kind of that assessment of kind of where we were when we kind of presented that originally. And so I'm thinking kind of a similar strategy or a similar approach might be wise here.
I'd really like to see this put on our next agenda. After we've had a chance to look at some of this stuff. Sounds really interesting, and there may be things that we can do, and it's certainly, with the aging population, there's definitely need to increase the number of spots.
Yeah, I wasn't sure how the county is involved, like in restripe, if a lot parking lot gets redone in the county, does the county have regulation control over what gets painted, or is it the city that it's put into? Because there was a parking lot near me that completely got restriped, and there's plenty of ADA spots. I didn't do the counting, but I drive a side wheelchair van that has a side, so I need the extra access aisle. And this particular one, as far as I could tell, I didn't see any spots that were van accessible. They got restriped, and I didn't know if it went through, because even our current state law, would say that it would have to have, at least by my count, at least one, van accessible spot, and I didn't see any. So I didn't know who did the regulation or oversight of those sorts of plans. If it was the county or the city that it resides in, but.
Well, it's definitely something we could look into. Anna, you had your hand up.
I thought maybe I would contribute what I know on this topic. So, like, for example, you were just saying, who does that enforcement? If someone's pre-striping or otherwise making a change to the parking lot, they should be pulling a permit for that. So it would depend on whether it's St. Louis County who's doing the code enforcement, or whether it's one of the municipalities. We have a sort of a chart, they call it a matrix, that outlines the code enforcement for each municipality and which areas might be enforced by St. Louis County. So there is a possibility there. And that is something to keep in mind. I know you were mentioning that people are typically using the ADA standard, but it's really the building code. It's the building code. And the ADA is usually aligning with it if we're using the IBC, the International Building Code, but not always. And then the state of Missouri has a ordinance from 2011 that increases the number of van accessible spaces that are required in the state of Missouri. So the ADA and the building code require that out of every 6 accessible spaces or fraction thereof, there'd be at least 1 van accessible. But Missouri requires that 1 in 4 accessible spaces be van accessible. So based on that, I do think that there's probably an opportunity to advocate for an increased amount for areas that St. Louis County is enforcing.
So, yeah, I personally would really like to look at the stuff that Steve is going to be sending and, talk about it more seriously at the next meeting. I love the idea of painting no parking in that striped area. I no longer have a side van. I got a rear van specifically because of the problems with the side van. But so many times when people parked in that, I run across that.
Yeah,
Thank
it's
you,
it's a hassle for sure. And,
Thank you.
even the one van spot for every 4, just by my experience, just isn't isn't enough, for what I need. But parking is one of my biggest frustrations in this. So.
Now, my personal experience, where I get my hair cut, on a couple occasions, I have found somebody park in the hash marks. So whatever handicap spots there were are not just filled, but even the hash marks. Where if you're van accessible, side opening van, even if you wanted to get back into your van, you wouldn't be able to, much less use the ramp to get onto the sidewalk. Because at this place anyway, some nitwit parked their car in the spot where it's supposed to be for the wheelchair lift. Just my 2 cents worth.
Yeah,
Yeah.
happens a lot.
I mean, I'm sure there have been times when people have been trapped have been locked out of their car because somebody parked there and they can't get back in their van.
Yeah, the one blog that I was telling you about, Jenny Smith Rolls On, that was the whole basis of her complaining and running it through the council was somebody had parked in the hash marks next to her van. She called the police came out, and they basically told her, we can ticket them, but we can't tow them. And, then you have to rely on a total stranger in some cases to basically back your van out so you can get into it, because you don't know how long that person's going to be parked in your way. So, yeah, that's the situation that people get put in.
And a similar situation, there were 2 custom motorcycles parked next to my van. And I checked the local restaurants. I went to the first one. I said, look, I don't know who parked or who rode those motorcycles, but they're legally parked. And if you happen to know who they are, could you ask them to move those bikes so that I can get in my van and go? And the hostess said, wait right here, sir. And she went, and next thing you know, there were these 2 guys who were in dire need of neck transplants. There were these big muscular guys, and they were glaring daggers at me like, what were you gonna do? I was like, yeah, okay. Beat up a guy in a wheelchair at a restaurant in full view of 100 people. I'd sure like to see that. So. They moved the bikes.
Anything else on this topic? Shall we talk about it again next month? No? Are there any public comments?
We did not have anyone register for public comment.
Does anybody else have any new business they want to bring up? We have not yet talked about. What?
If it has to be on the agenda,
Okay,
we could add it for next month.
All right, well, in that case, I guess it's time to adjourn the meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Okay. Well, thank you everyone for coming. It's been a short meeting, but I think that we've had some good discussions. Thank you.
Thank you.
See
Bye-bye.
you next month. Thank you.
See you next month.